Hello, all you late night strollers, park bench lovers, and automotive rollers. You found yourself in a place that examines all the obscure, truly independent, and canned movies of the horror genre. Now sit back and relax, or pray to God that it'll be over soon. This is Bloodhound Pix podcast. Here are your hosts.
Welcome to Bloodhound Pix podcast. This is Kyle.
This is Josh.
And this is Craig.
All right, and this segment we will be talking about cinema obscura. We will be highlighting a obscure horror film. Although this one is on Shudder, so it's not that obscure anymore. All right. I guess now we'll talk about Angst, 1983 Austrian horror movie. So I find this movie to be I honestly think it dethrones Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer for me as the most authentically grimy documentary serial killer movie I've ever seen. I just watch it and I feel dirty, and I was eating when I was rewatching it this time, and I was like, I don't even want to eat any food. I feel fucking disgusting right now. I just think that especially mostly the cinematography and the way that you're with the killer the whole time just fucks with your mind, and you're hearing his voiceover of his childhood abuse that he suffered and all of his past and all of this stuff is just very disturbing. But you also you come to understand the psychology behind it, and just that constantly being tethered to that character that's so deranged is just a terrible experience. But it's so well done that you can tell that it's the guy that did this never did another film, Gerald Kargel. I don't think I'm saying that right. It's Austrian, but so he funded the movie himself for 400,000 euros, which is 400,000 American dollars roughly, and went into a bunch of debt because I think it did okay in Austria, but it was also the time in the 80s when the video nasty stuff was going on, so it was very controversial. And it was never released in the UK because they were oh, it's probably just going to get banned. It was banned. I'm going to check my notes. There was somewhere that it definitely was banned. It was banned in the UK. There was somewhere else in Europe they were going to release it, and they just assumed it would get banned as well. And then it was triple X in the US, so not doing any business that way at all. Unfortunately. And really kind of just was an unknown movie until I think the DVD release, pretty much, unless you were German or Austrian or European, you probably never really even saw it. So I have a bunch of notes about the making of the movie, but I kind of want to throw it to you guys and just hear your impressions, and then I can talk some more.
You want to go, Craig?
Yeah, sure. This is the first time that I've watched it all the way through. I've seen it its entirety, but I watched them 20-minute chunks, so that didn't really do me any service at all, because it doesn't help at all, I think, setting up you have to watch it all the way through, I feel but I definitely get the Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer German version, and it is kind of weird to explain. It is very 70s and 80s German. The whole thing is basically all inner monologue, and it's kind of philosophical the whole time he's talking. I think it's very brutal and nihilistic, which fits with Germans too during that time. I enjoy it. I think you bring up a good point with Henry Cow, but there's something that's so, for me with Henry, I think not knowing fully what's in his mind or what is really going on with Henry, I think that for me was all the more scarier. And I guess maybe just because it's a regional thing, it takes place in the Chicago area and that whole area, the Midwest region. So I know those type of people. Hopefully not to their extent, but we get that. But I enjoyed it a lot. I think it's strange because about halfway through the movie, almost you're just kind of watching them meander around, and then it gets started, and then I like how frantic he is. I guess is my main thing. Is that he doesn't really seem like a skilled serial killer. He seems more like this guy that's just kind of trying it out. He's trying the best he can, and he's successful in a way, but he's not it's not all prepped, and he's it's not going according to plan basically every single moment. But then he also loves the fact that it's not going to plan. he just loves that adrenaline rush. Especially, I don't know how much spoiler we actually want to give to any potential listeners, but the ending itself, when it's kind of all coming together, he's still feeling a thrill, even though it's not positive on his part. Josh, if you want to.
Yeah, so I had never seen this before, and thankfully I didn't look anything up about it either. And I think obviously the Henry stuff, the comparisons are accurate, but I think for me, it reminded me a little more of another foreign film similar in Man Bites Dog. But for me, I think Man Bites Dog is just so much, I don't know, smarter than this movie was. I mean, obviously they are different, but that's what I was reminded of. And it is, I found it very off-putting. It was interesting in that there was no dialogue in the movie. I mean, obviously there was very little, and you're just listening to this fucking voiceover, which I found to be kind of grating after a while, because it was like literally the whole thing is just the guy, talking about this, that, and the other thing. And I don't know if it was just, I'm not necessarily a fan of that type of telling the story, but also like as he's talking about like all this like kind of cliched shit about his childhood. And, it was like, I understand it was 82. So, at that time, talking about, abuse and this and that. And, I don't exactly remember specific things that he was talking about, but it just seemed very kind of by the book, like almost what you would expect some psycho, to have happen to them. I thought too, there was some ridiculously well planned out shots in it, which I thought was just ridiculous because, it looked like the movie cost, Kyle said, I think, but it looked like it was really cheaply done, or it was inexpensive to make. And like, I distinctly remember some shot, I think it was like toward the end of the movie as he's like leaving the house maybe, and it's just this ridiculously long crane, almost like it was a drone shot. And I was like, Jesus Christ, there goes their whole fucking budget right there. And it was, like I said, it was off-putting. And, the comparisons, as we said, with Henry and as I point out, Man Bites Dog, I think are pretty, you're not going to get away from that, but I don't think it was as good as either one of those movies. And maybe because it was so off-putting, I think Henry's off-putting, also Man Bites Dog is certainly off-putting, but Henry's got, Michael Rooker for one thing, and it does have a little more entertainingness to it. I just made up that word. But yeah, I didn't dislike the film, but it was off-putting and got to be a little grating after a while. But I don't know that that's necessarily what they were, I think they were probably trying to accomplish that too. Yeah, Craig, go ahead.
Oh, well, I know, that's interesting you say Man Bites Dog, because I just watched that last month or something, and I didn't even think about it. Yeah, it is. And I didn't think about it in that sense until you mentioned it. But I would agree that Man Bites Dog is definitely, because it's also a black comedy, like it, has that kind of entertaining factor, and it has all those.
Well, even the killer is entertaining. This guy in Angst isn't really that entertaining. He's just a fucking nutcase.
That's why I'd say like Angst is probably more based in like a sense of realism, because Man Bites Dog, they're sitting there countless scenes, but where he shoots the guy that is making jokes at his birthday party. And
yeah.
He just kind of sits there and then goes back to eating the cake and eating whatever else. They are two different movies, and I don't know. It's interesting because they're very comparable, but then they're also, I don't know, Kyle, what do you?
I haven't seen Man Bites Dog, but yeah, I would go off what you're saying is just, I don't think this was trying to be entertaining. I think
no, not at all.
I think the grating stuff with the voiceover was probably not intentional, but definitely the off-putting stuff is like, yeah, I think they were trying to make it off-putting and just disturbing.
Yep.
I agree. And I was going to say what you guys said about Henry is there is that difference where it's like, yeah, this movie doesn't really have any fucking dialogue. So you almost need some of the voiceover just to give you something. Although I do think there are some moments like when he's in the house and the people come home and they don't know he's there yet and there's no dialogue and it's just super fucking like tense and like it really works. And I feel like it makes it a little bit more authentic when like he starts attacking them, where they like aren't really saying anything or they're just screaming because it's and at some point they're kind of looking at him and knowing they're not even saying anything because it's like clearly this guy's deranged. There is no amount of like saying anything. This guy's not going to be reasoned with. He's just like a fucking lunatic.
Yeah, I think that was I remember when it was over, I was thinking like I think some of that voiceover stuff should have been omitted because that part you just mentioned was like when it was just no music, no nothing, and him just being a fucking nutcase and attacking the the family or whatever. That was like probably the most effective thing. But then you get that voiceover back in there, and it's like clearly this is a film and blah blah blah. But yeah, I think that was one of the more effective moments was when it was literally no score, no voiceover, just him fucking going nuts.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that's one of the strong suits of it too, because there's not that much, like there's random little pieces where they have music, but most of it doesn't have music. And when it doesn't, it's almost more effective. It's almost more just like disturbing because you're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to feel about this, but we're just watching this terrible stuff happen. And it's like they're not giving you anything to go on. You know what's interesting? Speaking of what you were saying about like the cliches of child abuse and all this stuff, which I think is true. And if you made this movie today, yeah, it would be kind of like redundant.
Yeah, I think you have to change all that shit.
Well, yeah, it's just like too obvious, and there's almost it's like better just don't say anything because everyone knows that kind of stuff. But I guess back then that wasn't really, and even more so in Europe, like in the 70s and early 80s, it wasn't really accepted. So because basically this story is inspired by a real guy, Werner Niesek, and apparently, and he was a fucking nut, and basically almost like beat for beat what happened in the story was this guy's life with some more weird details. But apparently in Austria at the time, there was this thing that they thought was great prison reform, which was they would let prisoners out a couple weeks early for leave to go like get their affairs in order, like find a job, find somewhere to live, whatever, which I guess is what happens to this guy in the movie, but it's not really explained. It just seems like he's let out, period. But anyways, apparently this was a thing that they thought was like really good. And their definition of insanity wasn't really, like they didn't really differentiate between someone that's a criminal and someone that's like insane like this guy. So, he's doing all these things, like he kills the old woman at the beginning and that's just a crime that he does his time for, and then he's gonna go back into the world, which is this horrible fucking idea.
Yeah, I was pretty amazed that he fucking kills that woman in the beginning and goes into his whole like he tries to use he tried to use like the insanity plea or whatever, and but you only have to go to prison for 10 years. That's it. You're clearly a fucking psycho, but 10 years will do it.
Yeah, then it's fine. You're just gonna go back in the world because you're cured.
Yeah.
Well, even the ending is basically feels like it's leading up to the same thing.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, that he's just gonna be released again in 10, 15 years, and it's just gonna be a cycle that he keeps.
So for now, he's got 3 dead bodies in the trunk, so maybe he'll get 10 years for each body.
Yeah.
Well, they say at the end he's in prison for life.
Oh, okay. I didn't catch that.
But it does seem like that, and apparently that was part of like the inspiration, I guess, for the filmmakers, because it was like this, this blind spot in the like prison system where they're just like, well, yeah, you're good now. You're gonna go back out there. Because I realized that like as I was writing my notes and stuff, and like as we got to the end, I was like, oh yeah, it's only been 24 hours. Like he went to this coffee shop yesterday. Yeah. He already came back today and fucking murdered all these people and is going to prison for life. It's like, holy shit, dude.
Yeah. Speaking of I was going to ask, is it really based on a true story, or were they doing, because I was like, is that some Texas Chainsaw Massacre shit, or is it actually actually based on fact?
Yeah, the guy I was talking about, Werner Niesek, is a real Austrian guy who basically did this, and a lot of his like history and everything is straight from this. And then also there's 2 other guys, Fritz Harman, the Lycan of Hanover, and Peter Cruton, the Vampire of Dusseldorf. I've heard of these people because I go on Wikipedia way too much. But apparently just around that time, there was some book released, or they released interviews that psychiatrists had with these guys, because these 2 guys are from like the 30s. And the filmmakers had like read that, so they incorporated a lot of like, like what these guys really said their psychology was as far as his voiceover.
Well, I know, like, for me, as much as I love German cinema at the time, and you look at Fassbender and you look at like kind of all these directors, and going kind of what you're talking about, Josh, it might be I don't know if it's a cultural thing, but their dialogue is very on the nose, especially compared to even American cinema at the time.
Yeah, and you also have to, this is the weird thing, which this is like impossible to know unless you're speaking multiple languages, but like the older movies that you watch, the more you wonder, unless it's like a Criterion movie, the more I'm wondering like who translated this and like how well did they translate it, because sometimes it's poorly I don't think that's really the case with this one, but some other movies, sometimes you're like, that's not how people talk like anywhere. So that's mostly it. The other things I can say that were interesting were, so the lead actor, who's also in Das Boot, which I haven't seen.
Oh, nice.
He apparently, his dad was the head of a psychiatric institution in Austria, so he grew up there and like grew up around all these schizophrenic people that he would like play with as a kid because he lived there. So he drew on he knew a lot about psychology apparently. And the cinematographer and co-writer Zbigniew Rybczynski is actually an Oscar winner. He's like a weird experimental filmmaker and pioneered all this stuff in like HD video in like the 80s and won an Oscar for some short film. But apparently he was pretty involved in the making of the movie because the other guy had not really made anything before. Just some short films, I guess.
Like the cinematographer, the editor,
I think he was the editor too. Yeah.
All the roles.
He also, I watched all these behind the scenes things. The interesting thing with like all you were talking about, like they did all that stuff like super cheaply. Like they didn't have a real crane. They used an actual like construction crane that they just like asked people if they could use it, like, to be cheap. Then like all the stuff where they're like running in the woods and stuff, they like mounted steel cables from like trees or whatever they could. And they had the camera like on this weird pulley system, then with like pipes that run down the camera depending on how high it is, and then like someone would be at the bottom with the pipes running with the camera, which is insane.
Yeah, that is.
And then also like all the stuff with the guy when we're like with the killer, that's called a snorri cam, which obviously like Aronofsky.
I was gonna say the Aronofsky thing. I fucking picked up on that right away.
Yeah, but they built their own, and they also, to get some of the angles they wanted to get, they would shoot in mirrors to get like different perspectives where you're like super low, like almost underneath like ground level. But because it was like the 80s, the cinematographer decided like, because you would have to use an optical printer, I don't know like all the technology, but it would be kind of complex to shoot certain things through a mirror and then have normal shots and having to like flip the frame and stuff. So they shot the entire movie like that through mirror. Everything is shot through a mirror.
No shit.
Yeah, like he had drawings of the thing that would be mounted on the actor. That's this like 360-degree metal pipe thing. And the camera would be like shooting in like a mirror in front of his face. And I was like, that just gives me like respect for the whole movie just because like, what the fuck? Like,
well, yeah, that's like earlier I said that, Man Bites Dog was smarter. Maybe it wasn't, because that shit sounds incredibly complicated and fucking like, the amount of work to go into doing that.
The technical side of it, yeah, I know. And the thing is, like, you wouldn't even know. You just look at it and go like, oh, yeah, they had it like a crane. Yeah, it's insane.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess that's really it. I could go on, but I think that's it.
So as most are aware, horror cinema and television has really kind of blown up within the last decade, to the point that a large portion of even children's shows are horror themed, especially now that I have a kid, super monsters and all this other stuff with friendly vampires, I guess. This is kind of stretched outside of the television and film world too. And so this little segment, we wanted to take a moment to spotlight a work in another medium. It could be old, new, well-known. We are still trying to stick with something that's away from the mainstream, but we're not going to, like, for example, today we're talking about a video game. We're not going to talk about The Walking Dead video game or Alien Isolation.
Damn it.
Which Alien Isolation is very good, and I highly recommend it. But we are going to kind of highlight the found footage inspired game Outlast 2. Outlast 2 is a first-person survival horror video game where you play as journalist Blake Langerman, who is searching for his wife after their helicopter crashes in the Arizona desert. The couple was investigating a murder of a deceased teenage girl that was found downriver, and having been pregnant. During the search for his wife, Blake finds the cult has kidnapped her and are prepping her for a ritual. He also finds himself haunted by a traumatic event within his past that deals with a school friend. This was made by Red Barrels and released in 2017. The whole Outlast franchise was originally developed for Steam gaming platform, which is mainly online or through downloading. But since then, it's been made into a physical copy for major consoles where you can kind of it's a trilogy pack, and it features Outlast, the first one, the Outlast Whistleblower, which is the prequel to the first one, and then Outlast 2. I wanted to kind of highlight Outlast 2 because I think it's best of the three of them. It's the one that deals the most with the story. Outlast 1, it's a journalist going into a psych ward, and pretty much the patients are running everything, and you run around and you hide. And the whistleblower one just takes place beforehand to the person that kind of sent out the message about what's going on. Outlast got a lot of publicity when it kind of first came out because you're using a camera with night vision, which the whole time you have to find the batteries, flashlights, stuff like that. But the major thing is all you can do is run and hide. Unlike Alien Isolation, where at some points you get a weapon that you can kind of use to fight off the xenomorph, this you can't, which is kind of a complaint that's had too in making it more realistic and saying all you can do is run and hide. It's also, maybe there should have been a button, a normal person would at least be able to push somebody off of them or stuff like that, which is still in the sense of realism. But as somebody like me that's not a big fan of found footage, I think this is actually has more of an impact, where I think playing as the character and it kind of engrosses you in the story more. And the story itself it deals a lot with religion. It deals these kind of past traumas, and you find out that his friend, who was a little girl, was running from sexual predator that was, I believe, a priest or some sort of reverend, and then she fell down the stairs and she died. And him as a child, he found the body, and he I hope this is all accurate. I believe it is. And it's kind of that he kept his mouth shut. But yeah, I think it's surprising. It has some really good scares for people that want to play a game and are more interested in a story and something that's quick. I mean, it's probably only about 10 hours of gameplay, and it's basically all story. And I know Kyle has played it as well, if you want to talk about it.
Yeah, I really like it. I mean, I think we talked about this when we were playing it the one time, that like it's got some cliched story aspects like anything would. I mean, in this day and age for the most part. But I feel like just because it's a video game and because it's interactive, that makes the found footage aspect so much more interesting. It just makes the story more interesting because you're interacting with it, and because and obviously this is nothing new. This is like from Resident Evil on, but just the fact that the going through places and looking in drawers and finding documents and finding videos, and as much as you want to delve in the story, you can, or you can just move on and make it more action packed. Kind of.
Yeah, I mean, that's really all I have to say on it. This is just our kind of spotlight on it. Josh, I recommend you play it because I think you would probably get more of a kick out of it than the two of us, even.
Yeah,
Josh. I'm not being very helpful this time around.
That's fine.
What systems is it on, Craig?
It is on pretty much it came out online, but now you can get it on PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo Switch. It's on all the major current systems. Yeah, the 3-pack, since it was released originally through Steam, the 3-pack that you can buy, I think you can probably get it for under $20. And, it comes and it's 3 games, and it's a lot of fun.
In our next topic of discussion, my segment is a film only a mother could love. So I had to pick out a horror film that everybody fucking hates.
Both critically,
probably rightfully so. Yeah, critics hate it, fans hate it, everyone fucking hates it.
Even the screenwriter hates it.
Even the fucking screenwriter has to hate it.
Which we'll get into. So I picked Hellraiser Deader, which is the 7th goddamn Hellraiser movie, with good reason, because the three of us know the guy that wrote it. The nicest guy on the planet. He also taught us. His name is Neil Marshall Stevens. I'm sure you'll get into.
He's a great guy.
Yeah, Neil was the three of our mentors. But obviously, no one has anything good to say about Hellraiser Deader. I mean, it's not that hard to go to IMDb and we'll read all the user reviews fucking going off on how much it sucks. And, most people are not wrong. But since I can't say how shitty it is, I've got to tell you all the things about it that are good. So the three of us have a little bit of a cheating factor because we all read Neil's original version, which everybody that's listening to this, I think, will know that in the early 2000s, Dimension did this really awesome thing where they made Hellraiser films out of scripts that weren't Hellraiser films. So of course they did that with Neil's script, which was just called Deader. See, they even fucking just stuck Hellraiser right in front of his fucking title. And Deader, Neil's script that did not have Doug Bradley in it, we can all say was fucking good. It was a crazy good script with a ton of like really fucking whacked out ideas. You guys all agree, I would imagine.
Yeah.
He made it at a time where he was saying nothing was really coming out in terms of horror, right? And that he wanted to make something so scary, so it has a lot of more graphic than the final outcome. And then it was one of those things where it like got shopped, or it shopped around for a long time,
like 5 years, I think.
Yeah. And everybody wanted it. It was like the horror script for a couple of years.
Right. And then so Dimension, ends up buying the script off of Neil, and they have this very unique, very weirdo fucking script, and the thing that they can think to do with it is turn a good script into a shitty movie, which is fucking astounding. The whole Weinstein thing with the Hellraiser franchise is obviously something that we could get into in a wholly separate episode of this podcast, so we'll just leave that alone. But that was kind of their thing. I mean, they did it with Scott Derrickson's Inferno. They did it with Hellseeker. They did it with Deader. They did it with Hell World. And it's not like you can't tell when you're watching this shit. I mean, I rewatched Deader last night, and I think it takes an hour for Doug Bradley to show up. In a 90-minute film, he doesn't show up until minute 60, and it's astounding too. As I started with the fact that Neil's script that was just Deader was really good, and they somehow or another made a film that was not that good. But I need to talk about how good it is too. So one thing that is probably the most noticeable, especially again, we're the three of us that have a little insider edge in that. We've read the original script, and I can honestly say that from the beginning of the Hellraiser movie until, I don't know, what is it, about page 25 or minute 25, it's literally identical to Neil's script. It's the Amy Klein character goes to, where is it, fucking Romania, where this action with these cult is occurring, and goes into that dead chick's apartment. All of that shit is the exact same. And then of course she finds, the box there. We get our first, Hellraiser link right there.
The only difference is Romania, right? Because originally it was New York City.
Yeah. They had to change the location because obviously they're cheap as fuck, and it's going to be cheaper to shoot there.
Yeah, I was going to say, they were like, New York City's too expensive.
Well, that, and again, since it's just so much fun and easy to bash the fucking Weinsteins. They actually shot Deader and the next movie, Hellworld, at the same fucking time because why not? Let's make two movies with our budget instead of just one.
Is this the first one that they did the like combo and original script with Hellraiser thing?
No, the first one was the fifth movie, which was Inferno. That was the one that Scott Derrickson actually made.
Okay, so my point being is they didn't fucking learn their lesson the first time, and they're just gonna keep doing it.
Definitely not.
Well, and Hellworld, isn't that the one that has Superman?
Yeah, Henry Cavill.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and it's got to be his first role, or definitely one of his first ones.
Yeah, I think it's his first kind of American movie. Up until that point, he did like British TV or something like that.
Right.
Just moving into the Leo DiCaprio leagues right there. Like, there's three.
Oh man. So about from the moment that the Hellraiser Deader film starts till about page 25 or minute 25, it's almost the exact same thing as what Neil wrote. Obviously, their locations aren't the same, but I will say too that it's actually you get the introduction of the cult, people who kill themselves, and then somehow or another through some fucking voodoo witchcraft something or other they come back to life. And it's a great idea. It's definitely interesting. So we get that, and then also the Amy Klein character, the character that Carrie Word plays, she it's almost like she's a journalist, but it's almost like she's a detective, and she gets embroiled in this mystery, obviously. And that whole build up to about the end of the first act, I would imagine, roughly is, I mean, it is good. And I think, again, the reason that it works and the reason that it's so interesting is because it's literally just taking Neil's script without any of the Pinhead and Hellraiser shit and just shooting it. You know, it's after that when we get the fucking, you know, the homeless people that somehow live on the train and you know, it's just like my suspension of disbelief. It just can't be. I can't do it. And then, you know, you got to get at a certain point, Doug Bradley, you know, an hour into it, shows up and it just becomes a mess, kind of like the previous Hellraiser film, kind of like the previous one, because again, they're scripts that had nothing to do with this. And it's like, let's bring in somebody to just make the shit as confusing as fuck, which they do. And you don't know what's going on by the time, you know, we get toward the end of any of them, especially from 5 on. And this one's no different. It's basic Weinstein fuckery with Hellraiser films.
I think that one of the biggest problems too, though, is like what you're saying is the stuff still kind of works, even though it's in Romania and all this shit, like the cult stuff. The original material is still interesting, but also it's like so undercut because it's a Hellraiser movie as opposed to what the original script was. There's no mystery to what, you know what I mean? Like
Sure.
if you watch that, otherwise you'd be like, oh, what is this cult about? What is all this stuff? This, you're just like, when's Pinhead gonna show up? Like we know where this is going, and now you're drawing it out for an hour.
Yeah.
You already fucking knew from the title.
Well, I know if we can spoil it, because I think you can find Neil's original script.
Spoil it
online. No, I mean spoil the script, not the movie.
Okay.
Yeah, don't spoil Deader, Jesus.
People will kill you.
Yeah. But the script itself had like because at some point she gets stabbed in the back. She wakes up stabbed in the back or something. And
right, the same thing that's actually in the movie.
Yeah. In the original script, it does a whole, I mean, it's not Jacob's Ladder type, but it's like she's been hallucinating the rest of it. Basically, the whole, what was it, second half on is her dying with a knife in her back.
Right.
And it makes more sense why you would have all the dreamlike sequences, or which, yeah, watching Hellraiser Deader, it just becomes very muddy. And you're kind of...
Yeah, it's like it's like, we don't have any idea where this is going, so let's just make it confusing as fuck. Whereas with Neil's script, it was totally fine, totally made sense, totally knew what was going on.
Sons of bitches. I mean, that's like, to me, it's just a disappointment where I'm just like, we read that script, which I thought was pretty good. I want to see that movie. I want to see what that would have been. That's the loss.
It is, and it was, you know, I think too, I don't know that I don't, as popular as Neil, you know, told us that script was, you know, back in fucking 20 years ago almost now, maybe. I don't know that movie could get made. I think it was too fucking weird.
Because
probably, yeah.
It does have all the, which is a highlight in the script. It's kind of, it doesn't feel right in the movie itself, but in the script, maybe we can find a way to link it into for anybody that is interested to read it, if we can find it. But the whole underground subway scene is like this. It's a subway orgy thing that's really graphic in the script, and it's like it fits where
right
this version, yeah, just I would agree where I don't know how it'd get made now, because I don't think people would find a reason why you would have people riding around on a subway having a huge rave, and she's talking to a guy while he's getting...
That was the other thing I was going to say, which I think you can even tell in this version that's like 2005, because he said he wrote the script in 99, but maybe earlier. But
yeah,
even
like that.
Yeah, even in that span of time, it's like, yeah, this doesn't work anymore. You know, like sending a VHS tape and stuff. It's like it would be on the internet. You know, like there's some stuff that's just like that. A lot of that cool stuff too, with like you're talking about the underground train, is like it just you couldn't really do it anymore. There'd be a Vice documentary about it. It's like everyone would know about it. There's no like secret underground stuff anymore.
When she was supposed to be like, was it a trash? What did they call it? Working with trash magazines and stuff like that. It wasn't like she was some big journalist, which worked while I was in New York. I think the first one, and it's in the original, or it's in the movie too. What's the title of it?
I think it's like I'm a crack whore.
Yeah, I think it's How to Be a Crack Whore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the movie itself, I pause for a second because I think...
Take a breath. Yeah. Collect your feelings.
So, no, I was going to switch into gears and kind of talk about Neil. For those of you that don't know who he is, Neil Marshall Stevens, he pretty much got his start. he wrote for Monsters and
The TV show.
Yeah, the TV show. And then he's written like 30 features for Full Moon over the years, and some of those features have been cut in half and then put into other features. So there's like he has countless movies that are out, and he goes under the name Benjamin Carr
For some fucking reason.
Yeah, because of Union.
Oh,
Because
is that
Full
what
Moon-
it is?
Yeah, Full Moon is.
I thought maybe he didn't want to be. He wrote too many goddamn Full Moon titles. And he's like, I can't fucking use my name.
No, because Full Moon I think is non-union or something like that.
Oh,
Non-union
that's
regulated.
right.
And so he, based on union regulation, can't use it. But he also has credit for doing the rewrite of 13 Ghosts. And yeah, after Deader though, he got like a ton of work that kind of you wouldn't know. Like he wrote a couple versions of Blair Witch 2, which he was uncredited for. He wrote The Changeling, that then went nowhere.
That went fucking nowhere.
Yeah. He still writes though for Full Moon, or does like script doctoring for them. But Deader and 13 Ghosts. There's big movies that people. But he got paid. Cal, you might have to cut this part out. I don't know how much I can talk about it.
Well, yeah, we're not live, so we can say whatever we want, and then
he got paid a lot for that Deader script.
son of a bitch.
And he didn't even want to rewrite it.
Yeah, he could have gotten more money from the Weinsteins to fucking add Doug Bradley and refused to do it.
Yeah.
Jesus, man.
It might have been a competent film then.
Yeah. Right? Yeah.
You know?
Maybe if this goes far enough and people are interested, then we will see if we can bring Neil on. And
that would be awesome.
Yeah.
And just talk about Deader.
So I guess I wanted to, because I have it in mind, there was two other things that I'll mention in terms of, not taking a shit all over Hellraiser Deader. I think the lead actress, Carrie Werner, she's great. She obviously is pretty well known. I mean, I don't know what she does now, but, people know who she is. And another thing, too, is like, I saw the budget for the movie was $4 million. And I don't know if that means that $4 million was spent shooting Deader and Hellworld, so it basically got $2 million. Either way, $4 million isn't that much, but it doesn't necessarily look cheap. Like, the direction is pretty solid, except for the scene that Neil fucking hates that we don't need to get into, but it doesn't look cheap. I mean, there's some CGI that comes in, especially there's the scene with all the bugs, and it looks somewhat iffy, but I don't know. For me personally, I didn't think that it looked anywhere near, $2 million shot in fucking Romania cheap. So that and Carrie Werner, those are two good things about Hellraiser Deader.
You're just having such a hard time.
I just really want to say how much I don't like Carrie Werner in this movie.
What? You don't like her? You don't think she's good in that movie? I mean, at least with what she's given and told to do.
She's okay, but have you ever seen any of the movie series Emmanuel?
I have not. I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, we're gonna take a detour for a minute. So there's this whole series.
Yeah,
it started in like the 70s, I think, in France, but then it came to America at some point. But they're basically like softcore porn, and it's like a whole series that focuses on like one actress for however long, and then there's been like a bunch of different Emmanuels. But that's like what I know her from. She played Emmanuel in these movies where I was a kid that I was just like, ooh, boobs. I mean, she's gorgeous. But that's where I know her from. So when I watch this movie, I just go like, oh, okay, like that's who you picked to be the lead softcore porn like star.
So in this Emmanuel shit, is it like it's literal like X-rated, not triple X-rated?
Yeah, it's like old school softcore porn, like they just get naked and,
just
pretend to have sex.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Which has to be the most awkward thing ever.
It's got to be
like
terribly awkward.
Is there a plot, like a basic plot at least, or is it just...
Dude, there's...
Like room to room?
I can remember her having sex with this guy who's supposed to be an alien. But it's really, there's like no plot. The plot is like she's a beautiful woman, so she has like escapades.
Yeah, that is not a plot.
Nope.
If anybody listening is interested in sending us ideas for movies that have been panned both critically and by the fans and everything. And we have to try and argue and find good reasons for them and to highlight them, send them our way at our social media at Bloodhound Pix.
Yes. And if you have any ideas on how to improve those said horrible movies, please send them. Because I really think, I was thinking about this as we're having this discussion, like it would be cool if there was a cult around a shitty movie like this. Like we're making fun of this movie and then we find out there's like 15 people that love Deader and they're going to fucking kill us. And they're insane fans. And we're like, why? It's not good.
Well, I'm glad at least I said a bunch of good shit about it. So I'll be all right.
Yeah, I'm dead. The Emmanuel cult is going to get me first.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so I guess since we've digressed so far from our Deader discussion, we could probably put the kibosh on that, especially since.
So this is Unsung Cinema, where we will be taking a look at purely independent movies that have been coming out recently that are not being promoted by Netflix or have stars attached, major stars attached to it. This is stuff that is being made on what is considered a no budget by people that are just trying to break into the industry. So everything that we find that we're highlighting here are things that we think are very unique. So for this, our first version of Unsung Cinema, we will be looking at the 2019 movie Here Comes Hell,
that we've already reviewed for Fright Fest.
Yes, we have.
Here Comes Hell is a genre-clashing horror comedy about a 1930s dinner party in the English countryside that descends into carnage, gore, and demonic possession. Now, the plot itself is almost like a cabin in the woods type idea, but it's an English manor where a group of friends, all socialites, except one, kind of all go out to this manor that one of their friends just purchased. And they're going to have lots of alcohol in a very civilized manner, a dinner party. And then the owner of the house wants to try a seance as well. Directed by Jack McHenry and written by McHenry and Alice Sidgwick with their company Trash House Films. This is the company's first feature done on an estimated 20,000 pounds. Their only prior credit is a short film called Dungeon of the Vampire Nazis, which is on their website, trashhousefilms.com. We can link that in the show notes if you'd like to watch it. And it's a kind of a World War II exploitation comedy horror movie, or a horror short. As I said before, we were able to review this with Ginger Nuts of Horror for the London Fright Fest Film Festival. And if you look up our review and also our Dissecting Fright Fest, it's at one of our top picks of the festival. So for me, the best way to describe this movie is it's basically The Evil Dead or Evil Dead 2 through the lens of a 1930s gothic horror movie, shown by the cinematography, lighting, dialogue, and even the acting is trying to capture that same feeling you get from watching like the Universal monster movies. Obviously, because of budget, there's certain limitations. Film of the period that they're shooting on, it's digital, so you can kind of tell. And the major set pieces that are associated with those movies aren't there, and it's they use green screen a lot for those. But I feel they capture to the best of their abilities. Something that, and this is digressing a little bit.
No digressing.
Yeah, something that has come up in our reviews a lot is the Fanboy Project or Fanboy Movie, or there's probably tons of names for it. But this is a piece of work that pays strong homage to another famous movie or cult.
You mean like Dark Encounter?
I actually wrote that in here without giving away the title. A big example of this currently is a little show called Stranger Things. It has a ton of references to others' work, and a lot of its plot elements are inspired from the plots of these other works. So sometimes these movies or shows work, and sometimes the source material that is providing inspiration is so ingrained in this fanboy media that it doesn't stand on its own, or the audience says to themselves, this movie is trying to be Alien. I'd rather just go watch Alien. So Here Comes Hell has a couple scenes that are obviously the Evil Dead, well, more specifically the Evil Dead 2 references. but it's unique and has a strong kind of artistic vision that I feel earns the moments, since they're more of a spoof rather than an attempt to bank off of a cult favorite franchise. The major highlight is they have a section where they're building weapons to fight off these demons and go down into the cellar, and it mirrors the Evil Dead 2 where he's building the chainsaw hand. But instead of that, as they're building the weapons, it keeps going to them pouring more whiskey. And it turns out to be, it's really funny. And this is normally coming from somebody, if I see something like that, I will tune it out because I don't want to just go watch Evil Dead. But no, it works. So for me, it's a compliment, but it's probably some of the dumbest fun that I've had watching a movie in a while. It doesn't take itself serious, with the exception, I will say, the final shot they try and make serious doesn't fit for some reason. But normally, first-time directors in the genre, they want to make something that enters like the Grindhouse, Texas Chainsaw, Last House on the Left category, or they want to make something, as we've reviewed a lot of these recently, that's kind of a paint by numbers possession film that checks off all the marketing boxes. And what happens is they're overshadowed by the iconic in that style, or they're lost in a sea of others that come out just like it. You find yourself 2 hours after watching them, not even remembering really a single moment. But with this one, you can't really say that because it's been months since watching Here Comes Hell, and I can remember a ton of it clearly. A memorable movie is far better than a forgettable one. So that is me really promoting it. And I hope it does well. I think it's a good card for the people to potentially get, more funding later on. And so I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think what you pointed out was the only thing I probably didn't like was the last moment of trying to kind of have a serious moment. But all the Evil Dead 2 inspired stuff was the best stuff in the movie.
And it's only about 85 minutes, or it's a short movie, but yeah, it takes a while to get going. Which I agree with that. You want it to, in a way, just give us 15 minutes and then just get right to the Evil Dead inspired stuff.
Yeah, it was my favorite of anything that we saw for Fright Fest. Obviously, Come to Daddy is a better movie, but this was just my shit entirely because I am a big fan of the Evil Dead, and this certainly is very inspired by that. So, it's going to perhaps turn off people who, are not inspired or who are not fans, because it is pretty derivative of Evil Dead. So, knowing that, if you're not a fan, you probably won't be a fan of this. But as inspired by Evil Dead as it is, I felt like it also did its own shit to a pretty effective degree. One of my favorite sequences, and obviously I won't talk about it in great detail if you haven't seen it, but you guys will know what I'm talking about, is the sequence with the woman that shrinks. I thought that was just phenomenal. Obviously, some green screen shit was used for that, but whatever. So yeah, as I said, we reviewed it, and I talked nothing but praise for it. So yeah, I'm a fan, and I hope that people's eyeballs see it, and it turns out good for what's his name, Jack McHenry. Yeah, so I'm a fan.
So I confused that woman with a different actress for the Emmanuel.
Yeah, I know you did.
It's actually, yeah. But Carrie Werner has done the same type movies, very cheap softcore porn movies or whatever.
Well, she was in Thinner. Remember that?
Yeah.
She plays a hookerish type.
Yeah, go figure.
No, we can't use all that good material, Kyle.
I know, he's gonna cut it.
No, we're not cutting it.
So, but the real actress or the actress I was thinking of was Krista Allen.
Oh, Krista Allen. Okay.
Yeah, who was in a bunch of.
Yeah. Okay.
And we'll get into that more on the Emmanuel podcast that we're gonna start. I'm gonna start.
Well, we're going to now.
So, thank you all for listening and trudging through our first episode of this podcast. It
went pretty well.
Yeah, I think it was good. Don't sell us short.
We'll see. Okay. No, thank you all for listening in on our first episode. Please feel free to look us up on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at Bloodhound Pix, Pix. Don't look up Bloodhound Films or anybody else because
they're a bunch of assholes.
Yeah.
Legally, we're required to say that they're assholes.
Yeah. If you're interested or have any ideas for obscure horror films, critically panned horror films, any sort of purely independent movies that are coming out soon, or any sort of media outside of film and television, be it a graphic novel, a book, music, whatever you want, send it our way, and we'd be more than happy to check it out. We'd love to get a community involved trying to bring light to all of these films.
Yeah, we need to raise awareness about movies like Deader.
Definitely.
And if you are interested enough, please feel free to voice your responses about getting Neil Marshall Stevens on. We can talk about Deader.
How do you spell Emmanuel?
EMMANUELLE.
Oh, okay. That's why it's fucking me up.
There might be a Q in there somewhere too. I don't know.
I gotta look this up.
Or movies such as Stitches, not the clown one, but a full moon film about people in a bed and breakfast and revolving around stitches. I don't even know what to really say on it. Or one that's about, what's it called?
Super Hybrid?
Yeah, or if you'd like to talk about Super Hybrid, which maybe we should do that movie next. We'll just call that segment the Neil Marshall Stevens.
Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, we could probably fit Neil Marshall Stevens up for that entire thing for fucking weeks, man.
We could.
We do every full moon thing that he's done. And,
Exactly.
Yes.
40 episodes right there.
Yeah.
Sort of last minute stuff that you guys have.
I got nothing.
I got nothing. We'll see you next time.
Yeah.
Okay.
I hope you listened.
See you next time. This is Craig,
Kyle,
And Josh.
with Bloodhound Pix, and we're going to be doing this monthly, so tune in.